Welcome to Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay, a shot of truth serum for your investment and insurance questions. I'm Josh Knoll, the owner of Gulf Coast Financial Advisors, and I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jay Stubbs, director of the Gulf Coast for Concourse Financial Group. We are brought to you on the Gulf Coast Financial Advisors Podcast Network. Listeners, you're in for a treat today. This is our first episode of the Women of Mobile Bay. It's going to be an ongoing series where we have a conversation with busy and successful women from both sides of Mobile Bay, both here in the city of Mobile and over in Baldwin County. One of the reasons for the series stems from the fact that Jay and I were both raised by very strong women. I had my mom, Linda, and my grandma, Virgie, that helped raise me. And of course, Jay's mother, Jackie, overcame a devastating personal experience to raise the man that he is today. So with all that said, we're going to welcome our first guest in this series. Her name is Michelle Melton. She is the Deputy Director of Real Estate Asset Management for the City of Mobile and JD, University of Denver. But before we get into Michelle's story, let's have our friends from Sloth Racer kick us off. All right. Hey, Michelle, how you doing today? Are you nervous?
A little bit.
A little bit? Well, just relax. Let your personality come out, and you'll be just fine. Nothing to be nervous about here, right, Jay?
Not at all. We'll have a good time. We'll ask some very difficult questions, and then we'll give you some layups.
I'm so excited about that.
That's right.
We'll give you some layups. I do want to point out to our listeners that there may be some people that aren't familiar with South Alabama, Mobile Bay, Mobile, Baldwin counties. These are obviously your market, my market. So for anybody that's outside of that area, you're looking at a map. It's the South Alabama, and there's a bay that separates two of the largest counties in South Alabama. A lot of people live down here, and that's why the focus is on the women of those two areas.
Yep, perfect. Well said. Well, before we get going, let's do a quick housekeeping for compliance. Jay Stubbs and Concourse Financial Group are not affiliated with Prime Capital Investment Advisors, Qualified Plan Advisors, or Gulf Coast Financial Advisors. And me, Josh Knoll, I'm not affiliated with Concourse Financial Group. All right, so Michelle, let's dive right in. Let's talk about, we introduced you as the Deputy Director of Real Estate Asset Management, and that's a whole lot of syllables and a lot of vowels. That's a big title. And then you're JD at University of Denver. So tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, my Juris Doctorate had an emphasis in natural resources and land use law. So that's what I like to do and have done in the past and still do to some extent. But for real estate asset management, as you can imagine, Mobile's an old city, so we have a lot of land and properties that some are developed, some aren't. Some we manage, and some we manage better than others, and some don't have anybody in them and are very old. So we can lease them. We try to sell our surplus properties. Yeah, and then if we have to acquire more for trails or greenways or parks or another building to house people, then we do that too, among other glamorous things like janitorial services and porta potties and Mardi Gras and stuff like that.
Well, we are thankful that you do that, because if you didn't, the families that participate in Mardi Gras, which was our most recent episode, we discussed Mardi Gras in Mobile, they wouldn't come downtown because it wouldn't smell too good, which is one of the reasons a lot of people don't go to New Orleans Mardi Gras, because it doesn't smell too good. But we appreciate everything that you do for the city. I have a little bit of a role there as a volunteer for the Planning Commission and serve as the chair of that. So we talked about that earlier. We haven't crossed paths yet, but maybe we will if you have to subdivide a property one day. But that's neither here nor there about the discussion of women in the area. Just want to let you know, I think I know what you do.
That's good stuff. All right, so Jay went to links to talk about to explain to our listeners not from the area the difference when we say Mobile Bay on both sides of the bay. I'm going to go ahead and jump in because I want to hear a little bit more about Michelle's background. But Michelle, tell us where you're from, and then we're going to compare and contrast that a little bit to Jay's experience with the universities.
Okay, well, I grew up in Auburn, Alabama, War Eagle, but I've lived in...
War Eagle or War Damn Eagle?
War Damn Eagle.
Now we're
They're
talking.
pretty good at basketball right now, so the Final Four's in New Orleans, too, so that's a prospect to go to.
Heck yeah.
It's right down the road. But so, yeah, I grew up in Auburn. I did not go to Auburn because it'd be grade 13, but they still get a lot of my money. I have season tickets and whatnot, and I love it, and my parents are still there. So I am an Auburn Tiger, and I bleed orange and blue. But I've lived all over the country as well in about 10 different states. So.
All right. And then, Jay, you are little bit of an Alabama fan?
You know, we don't want to dive too much into the college weeds here, but yeah, I'm a little bit of an Alabama fan. I'm a huge SEC fan.
Perfect.
And I enjoy watching the basketball that's going on right now. You're perfectly right there. The Auburn Tigers are doing just fine. And it's great to support any team in the SEC. But yeah, I'm not going to start competing with her on titles and how many that Alabama has versus Auburn and NFL
Shots
draft.
fired.
We're in everything school.
NFL draft picks.
It's not just a football school.
Programs. So anyway.
All right, well, we'll get back to our main topic here. So, Michelle, we're going to talk about a couple different things. One, we want to talk about what you do that's unique, because as you were laying out your experience, I know I've been around you long enough to know you do it somewhat nonchalantly, but the things that you're handling, the regular person out there may not fully understand the detail and what goes into that. Plus, to be honest with you, one of the reasons we're doing the Women in Mobile Bay is to let other women, and maybe even people like my daughter, have some role models for things that they would like to do for a career. So we're going to do that, and we're also going to talk about maybe a little bit of personal finance and what it's like being a JD, what it's like maybe being single, all the finances behind that. I think we described that as a sink, right? Single income, no kids. So, but first, let's talk about what are like 3 or 4 things that you do. I think you do contract law. What's that like? What's that mean?
Oh, it's pushing a lot of paper. It can be glamorous and exciting, but to negotiate real estate contracts or architectural engineering contracts with the architects and engineers or consultants. So it doesn't sound glamorous, but it can be exciting because some of it is sexy stuff with buildings and whatnot, or new buildings. So I do a lot of that. I push a lot of paper. But I enjoy doing that. I enjoy contract law, and I'm good at it. So,
how long have you been with the city?
Going on 3.5 years.
And where were you before?
The Mobile Airport Authority, which is a whole different ballgame when it comes to real estate transactions. And so,
runways and buildings.
Well, you have to deal with the FAA, and you can't sell property at airports because then the FAA frowns upon that and says, like, oh, you don't need this grant to do that. If you can sell property, you got money.
Interesting.
So you have to lease a lot. So at Brooklyn, there's hundreds and hundreds of leases.
And the big topic right now, I think, would be in the city of Mobile would be considering annexation and putting forth growing west. So I'm sure that's heavy on your plate.
Not right now, but it's something.
Could be.
Yeah, it could be. It could be.
Well, okay. And with that, on the city of Mobile, you're not originally from here, even though you're an Alabama girl, right?
Correct.
So, but you had at least some familiarity with Mobile before you came down. Some? Little?
So my dad grew up in Mobile.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
But do you feel like through your work, do you feel like you've just uncovered this whole other story and facts of Mobile? Like,
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's old. It's real old.
And how does that work out?
Some of the buildings we have are really, really old, or hundreds of years old, to go along with it.
For example, I used to develop land, and when I was doing raw land out in the country, so when I'd go to get a utility easement or find the water line, anything like that, pretty simple. What's that like in the city when you're trying to even just widen a road a little bit?
Oh, well, I do that right now as a right-of-way agent. So it's you uncover a lot of stuff in Mobile, a lot of old stuff, a lot of clay pipes, a lot of wooden pipes that can't be very deep because of the water table. And also, both in Baldwin, I live in Baldwin County, but in Mobile and Baldwin counties, you do have the bay that Jay mentioned, and that's a stop. There's a hard stop there, so you can't go beyond that. But when you are doing road work in Mobile, maybe in Baldwin too, but seriously in Mobile, you do run across a lot of stuff. We haven't had any like Spanish galleon treasures show up. We just did a huge project in Mardi Gras Park. A lot of it's underground that you guys don't even know about, but it looks better. But millions of dollars went to underground work. But I was hoping that we would get some like treasures or something like that, but nothing turned up. But
no, we'd have to probably dig up Fort Condy, but it's on its second.
That was not the original. It's not the original, yeah. And I think I don't know where the original actually was, but that water is always coming up. It's an artesian well right there, so it must have been somewhere around there.
That's right.
Well, not only potentially digging up buried treasure, but you're dealing with a lot of historical families and corporations.
Yes. Jay probably knows more about that than I do, being from here, yes.
It is a deep city of a lot of family names, a lot of family land, a lot of family businesses, as you well know, Josh. It's just like any other town that's been in operation for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Right.
The newer cities in this country don't have the luxury of that, but there is some deep-rooted family relationships that I'm sure Michelle has to contend with sometimes.
Does that require some tact and some couth?
Indeed, yes, it does, and some very gentle handling.
Yes, even when you're just needing a temporary construction
maybe a
easement.
lot of times sitting on front porches and talking things out.
Now we're talking. Very good. Well, hey, I had the other thing before we go on to the other part of our podcast. You had mentioned private and public partnerships. Now, I've heard that word. I kind of have a general idea of what that means, but can you dive into that a little bit more?
Well, yeah. So when a city's developing something, if it's a greenway or if it's a baseball park or something like that, then get some of the private sponsors from some of the corporations around. It could be Airbus and or Evonik does a really good job here in Mobile. In Chattanooga, when I worked for the Trust for Public Land, Coca-Cola has Lyndhurst Foundation, which donated a lot of time and money and sweat and tears to helping us create the Tennessee Riverwalk. So I would negotiate real estate transactions to get parcels to create the Tennessee Riverwalk, which is now 26 miles long, and it's great. But the Lyndhurst Foundation, Coca-Cola really helped with that too. And it was Coca-Cola money, but it's under the Lyndhurst Foundation, so it sounds, not Coca-Cola in your face, kind of jazzy. It's like it's a Chattanooga name, so that worked out. So stuff like that. I mean, we do that. It happens here. I think it could happen more. So I think that both Mobile and Baldwin counties could probably embrace that a little bit more.
Well, I think that's
and
one
using
of the
the
things
corporations
for,
that are there.
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
That's in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, and because Airport Authority too, to the economic development, I would deal with more of the corporations and stuff, and that doing type stuff like that, especially if there's going to be an airport in downtown.
Well, last job-related question for now, but you had mentioned economic development and your relationship to chambers of commerce as one of your passions or one of the things that you do. How does it all play out? Are you at a lot of different city events? Are you out there, kind of doing your thing, City of Fairhope? Have you done stuff like that?
Yeah, I have done more in the past because we've been busy with other things, i.e. Mardi Gras and stuff like that, and the sexier things we talked about earlier. But yes, to go into Chamber of Commerce's, and there's also these both counties holding hand type things too. Like you have the MPOs that you can go to. I sat through an MPO meeting last night over in Baldwin County, which was good though because it was talking about Mobile and Baldwin counties.
When you say MPO,
Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Okay.
So
okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There's one over in Mobile and there's one in Baldwin County, and then oftentimes they will coordinate. Hopefully they'll do that more, especially with the bridge and stuff like that.
I was just about to ask. For those that, earlier in the podcast, we talked about the bay. Well, we have the interstate that goes over the bay, and then we have this other 2-lane, lower to the ground, lower to the water roadway that gets people back and forth from Mobile to Baldwin counties. But for those of you listening, if you try to go through the city of Mobile over to Baldwin County, or even coming back into the city during the summer months, going beach traffic, you could be stuck on that bridge or that roadway for hours.
Yes.
And so those listening know that we need a bridge desperately. And so I'm hoping that those MPOs between the two counties are starting to figure out what that bridge is going to look like. However,
well, I'll
be 60 years old before it comes in.
That's correct.
I've just turned 45.
It won't have bike lanes on it. I asked that last night.
No bike lanes?
However, there's going to be some more right-of-way acquisition, I hear, on the causeway in Spanish Fort to accommodate bike ped.
Yeah, what Jay was referring to, the lower part of the road is the causeway. The upper part, the I-10, is the Bayway. And
the Bayway, you get stuck.
The Bayway, you get stuck.
Causeway, you can pull over and have a beer or something.
True.
I'm a Causeway girl, so.
And to be fair, it's not just locally that it impacts, because, we're kind of a hurricane evacuation route, so when it goes through the tunnel and it gets jammed up for miles, it becomes a real problem. So we're making light of it, but the reality of it is desperate need of a legitimate bridge.
We don't mind traffic, Josh, because that's where most of our listeners will hopefully turn us on and put on the Every Dollar Counts podcast and see what the heck we're talking about today.
Love it. All right. So, Michelle, I want to pivot. We're going to talk about your personal experience, and we don't have to dive deep on your finances or anything like that. That's not the point. Really, what we want to talk about is what is it like to put yourself go through getting your JD at the University of Denver, coming out, get into the workforce. What did those jobs look like? How did you handle your finances? Did you start saving retirement early? What does it look like being you, an attorney, single, if you don't mind me saying, and navigating all that through the course of your career? Even as much as what does it look like with income? Has there been income disparity? What's that looked like?
Yes, there's income disparity. It's still 90 cents for a woman to the man's dollar in the United States.
Stronger.
Yeah, so that's a thing. Even though the soccer girls are coming out, Jay and I talked about, he brought that just came to fruition, so good for them. But I wouldn't say I started planning early. Probably, I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago for retirement. Of course, that helped with certain types of jobs and whatnot too. So if you work for corporations or government entities, and those things kind of come with the job anyway, so you don't have to go fend for yourself or what have you. But one thing I would, as a sink, I think we mentioned that because I'm single income, no kids, I would like to talk about that more eventually with one of you guys or both of you guys, because I don't know if I should have more risky investments or not, because I'm only looking out for me.
Well, that would be a conversation you have with Josh.
Okay.
But yeah, certainly for discussion. But interestingly enough, I have a couple of background questions that are yes or no's, and you can elaborate if you want. Did you have to worry about student loans?
I still worry about student loans.
Okay, so you're in the process of looking at that and navigating those waters.
I'm paying them off, but hopefully they'll go away because they're getting in a lot of trouble.
But you made the decision, okay, I'm going to go get my
I went to the
degree.
It's a private law school, and Denver's not cheap to live in.
Gotcha.
It's also a lot of fun, and fun costs money. So
there's also, and when you get your job out in the marketplace, you're managing that income as a single person, no kids. You get a lot more flexibility with what you do with your money. You're not having to save for college like some of our listeners are.
Right.
You're not having to pay for upbringing of children, which a lot of our listeners do. I'm interested to know what single income, no kids woman or man says, hey, I'm going to go travel. I'm just going to go book this and go. Or, what are your hobbies outside of dealing with contract law and negotiations and private and public partnerships with the city?
I like being outside a lot, so I do a lot of hiking and kayaking, and I'm a big birder. So a lot of my trips follow bird migration.
That's fun.
So I go to Maine when the puffins are there, and I'm going to Cuba in April. Finally, booked it in 2019 for 2020, and it's been rescheduled 4 times, but it's on.
So travel is where you put your
I would say for
recreational
sure.
dollars.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's
and most of them. I mean, in being somewhat of a baby philanthropist, I give some money away to things that I like. So.
Oh, I've got 4 kids. Are you giving money away?
No, I'm not donating. Not really donating to that type. No.
No. 501c3s only, please.
Love it. All right. Well, I want to wrap up with this question, Michelle. It's open-ended, but if someone came up to you, we're coming up to you and asked you, what is your professional passion? What would you say?
I would like to do more land transactions that adds acreage to parks, to create parks and trails so people can get out more often. I think we all have a nature deficit disorder in this country, maybe in the world. It became more apparent during COVID because people had to be outside to do stuff, and people were walking around like, hey, this is pretty cool. There's a butterfly, And it really does help our psyche and stuff. So I don't want to be chained to a desk. I'm not saying I'm chained to a desk now, but I am inside a lot for work, and I don't think it has to be that way. Probably shouldn't be that way for most of us, because getting outside helps us, like I said, with our psyche and just well-being and whatnot. So I'd like to do more stuff like that. That's because my law degree was an emphasis in natural resources and land use law, and it was kind of designed like a parks for people type thing for the outside to be for people to enjoy, however that might be through a municipality or a private organization or whatever, just to create more green space and maintain them so we can all be healthier and happier.
So, Michelle, those are good and positive and goal-oriented things. I'm also interested to know, does anything worry you? I know what worries me, keeps me up at night with 4 children, but, is there anything about the future, taxes, the economy, the world? Is there anything that worries you? Or are you just worry-free?
I'm definitely not worry-free, and that might be a whole nother episode. But, yeah, taxes don't bother me. Taxes are taxes. That's fine. I need to do mine, So.
True.
Right. No. Beyond an asteroid hitting Earth, because there is a website before the movie Don't Look Up came out that you can look at, and I do that, and that does keep me up at night sometimes, especially after you see that movie, if that's how we're going to react, which very well could be the case.
So while we're at home with our kids on STEM studying for the quiz tomorrow, she's looking up asteroid time
There
frame.
is a website, I can share it with you. It is frightening how close they come and how big they are.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, and I think, just my opinion, that a lot your passion professionally ties into a little bit of your passions and your interests personally, because you are outdoorsy. You know all these different birds. You know these. You even know names of trees.
I know lots of I know a lot of things about the outside world.
Yeah, which country boy here couldn't hardly tell you the difference between
sad.
oak and a pine. I grew up in the middle of the Ozarks.
Tragic.
It's kind of sad. So, all right, Jay, I'll give you a final question. I'm gonna start wrapping this up.
So, Michelle, we've done over 50 Every Dollar Counts podcasts.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They've been fun. They've been, objective for those that might be new listening, because they see Michelle, I'm going to listen to this lady and see what she has to say. Our objective on our podcast is to give financial advice, to dive in deep on certain topics. Are there any topics that you think we should do for the future of the podcast? What would you like to hear? Well, you've already mentioned one.
Yeah.
Should I be making more risky or
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think that would get a lot of people would listen to that.
Where do
Because
I need to be
I'm
putting-
not the only one.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue because
We just
people
have
are
to be-
staying single longer and choosing not to have kids, even though there's going to be whole COVID.
Well, Cam
kids.
Marson will tell us that, generational expert we've had on the podcast.
Yeah, he's
before.
he's great. Yeah.
Cam will tell you that the baby boom generation, and then the Gen X, and now the Gen Y, and then the millennials.
Yeah.
They're just.
I like his stuff about that, about how the emails come with 3 and 4 exclamation points. There's no periods or commas or any other
the
punctuation. It's just
the birth rates are slowing. There's just some people that are saying
Plummeting.
Not there's women that are saying I can't find a good guy, and then there's if you can't find a good guy, have a family and a household, and then there's no kids to come around. So the birth rates may be challenged here in the next couple of decades.
Very good. All right. Well, we'll give you the last word. Michelle, you want to say hi to your mom and dad? Do you think you can get them to listen to this?
They will not listen to this. I'm not even sure if they know what a podcast is, but I will be talking to them later on
Maybe
today.
we'll introduce it to them.
We could. My dad might be hip on it.
Well, I want to thank you for joining us today. You did a great job, like I knew you would. Anything that we left on the table that you want to express?
No, not today.
Not today. All right. Well, maybe we'll have to have you come back.
Sure.
Maybe you'll do your own podcast.
Maybe.
Contract law, it'll be riveting.
Oh gosh, that would be riveting. If how to go to take a nap.
Very good. Well, listeners, if you want to reach out to us and continue the conversation, you can text or call 251-327-2124. Pardon, you can call that number, not text it, to leave a message. Plus, you can visit gulfcoastfa.com. If you want to find Jay Stubbs, and especially if you're an independent or semi-independent advisor or agent, you can reach him at jaystubbs.com. That's jaystubbs.com. So another show in the can. I want to thank Michelle Melton, which they can find you on LinkedIn, right?
That's correct.
Yep,
Yes.
Michelle Melton. Look for the job description, the Deputy Director of Real Estate Asset Management for the City of Mobile. Also, many thanks to our producer, Johnny Gwynn, here in Deep Fry Studios. Always a thanks to my co-host, Jay Stubbs. And lastly, a huge shout out to all of you that have joined Jay and I on this journey, and to those of you that are joining us now. Do me a favor, please subscribe on the Apple Podcast app or wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And while you're there, you would be doing us a huge favor if you would rate and review the show. It helps other listeners like you find us. Lastly, if you like the show music, go check out slothracerband.com. That's slothracerband.com. And they're going to take us home now. This has been Every Dollar Counts with Josh and Jay. Advisory services offered through Prime Capital Investment Advisors, LLC, PCIA, a federally registered investment advisor. PCIA, doing business as Prime Capital Wealth Management, PCWM, and Qualified Plan Advisors, QPA. Gulf Coast Financial Advisors is independent of Prime Capital Advisors. Information presented for educational purposes only, is not an offer or solicitation for the sale or purchase of any securities. All investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, be sure to consult a tax professional before implementing any tax or investment strategies.